Yo, Fantastic Hip Hop's got another video for us to react to. Why Drake is losing it because his album flopped. Now, if you're new to the channel, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, notification bells on so you don't miss when I drop a new video on the road to 10K. OG members, what's good with you? New members, hey, if you like what you're seeing, definitely become one. So oh man, it's very interesting. The level of just shenanigans that hip hop is on right now it's very interesting because it's like there's always got to be some sort of comparison, or drawback to the beef. The beef is still fairly new, but there's still dialogue, like whether or not Kendrick went too far. I don't think he did. Uh, Whether or not like us is divisive, which I think I'm gonna do a reaction to it. Curtis Keen has a video on that. J. Cole and this new track, which I thought was very dope. Um, and some people just aren't feeling it, whether that's the kind of, I wouldn't say surface level, but I had this particular critique when it came to Joey Badass, which I think is interesting because I still feel like, though J. Cole used some lines that, bars that we've heard before, even in the combination that it was delivered, there was still some new bars to it. I was looking at Open Mike Eagle's reaction to it. I was looking at Fantano's reaction to it. And those are the people who, have the most to say. Even I think Joe Budden was kind of like at first like I don't want to the rapper in me doesn't want to hear that, but the man in me is like, yeah, that's dope. And I get what he's saying, but I feel like why not let these artists just make art, And that's with all three of them, Kendrick, Drake, and J. Cole. Now with Drake, Drake. What's interesting about Drake and my biggest critique with him is the fact that, a lot of people are complaining about AI right now, but I think Drake is worse than AI. Because it's just all like it's like, why is there this low effort, it feels like, releases? From the snippets that I did hear from it, it doesn't sound good, this particular project. And even the fact that I've been seeing people say how Party Next Door is not even really on a lot of the tracks, I'm just all like, that's why when I did my last reaction in regards to Drake's album, I was just all like, this just seems interesting because it feels like there's this self-destructive aspect because I feel like Drake is trying to get out of his contract and go independent. And somebody, I forgot who it was, but somebody was saying pretty much the same thing. And I was all like, yeah, that's gotta be a reason for it because why is it so bad? Now, some people are saying that it's good, whatever. And people are trying to compare Drake's current sales either with the sales that GNX did first week or even with Weekend and everything like that. And even against Drake's own catalog, which I feel like if there's any comparison that should be done, it's to his own catalog and his own releases. So let's see what Fantastic Hip Hop has got to say.
Now, when it comes to Drake and the release of his album SSS for You, after all of the
He doesn't
excuses,
even
coping,
say.
and crash outs, they gotta follow
He doesn't
through,
even
and
say the
there is
whole
no
name.
more running from the truth. As with this 21 song disaster, Despite the fact that Drake and everyone around him are in such a fantasy world that they are trying to act like this record's performance is not seeing a near 50% drop off from Drake's most recent albums, in the reality of everything, the music industry, hip-hop, and the entire world is now seeing that Drake has had one of the biggest fall-offs that we have seen in hip-hop history. As now that the actual numbers have come out for this record and we are looking at how this entire project is holding up, it has failed more than anybody on Drake's side of things would ever want to admit. And now before we go any further into all of this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. And now as we are really here and Drake has failed this bad with this thing, it is more important than ever to leave a like and subscribe because the Drake fans don't want you to hear about how bad this record is actually doing and how bad things are about to get for their guy now that this album has actually failed. And so of course, with that said, when it comes to Drake and SSS For You, well, Drake is trying to act like this album belongs with the rest of his number ones and is making this thing seem like a success because it's Party Next Door's best performing album, which I mean is only because Drake has finally taken him out of the writer's room and has actually given him somewhat of an actual role and presence that people can see here. Beyond whatever they are trying to tell you, this album has actually performed atrociously, and even with the first week numbers being 246,000, as really, these numbers from streaming were barely pushing over 200,000, and the only reason why this record did nearly 250 is because Drake fans have made these pathetic plans to support the album and boost its numbers, all because they actually believe that this record is being suppressed. Overall, when you compare this record's performance to Honestly Nevermind, which had about just as low sales and streaming numbers, but when you realize that one of these records in Honestly Nevermind had half of the tracks, I mean, when you actually measure what this music means and what it represents in the industry, beyond that record being a surprise dance album that was released,
that was my biggest, when I saw how many tracks was on this project, and then I'm just all like, and then you make a collab after this crazy beatdown that you receive, you know, your response back to that is to drop this collab album. To me, that just didn't make sense from an artist standpoint as well as a fan standpoint, as far as a fan of hip hop. You know, it did not make sense to me, you know, and like I said before, the only way that it makes sense is if he was releasing this as a final project on the label, so that way he could get out of his whatchamacallit and then deliver a solo project. But even then, why do that to your legacy? And he's not the only artist. I say the same thing about Kanye at this point, because a lot of his newer stuff is almost unlistenable. You know, like you could barely listen to it. I'm talking to Kanye about Kanye. And it's unfortunate. Like, I'm seeing this happen with people who have put out great work, and you would think that things would get better. I think about an artist who's doing that well is someone like Black Thought, someone like Met the Red Man and Redman. You know, these are people who are aging gracefully. Nas, you know, aging gracefully within hip hop and their boss. Common, you know, people who are aging gracefully with time. But hearing this from Kanye, hearing this from Drake, it's just all like, what is actually going on? You know, and the only thing that I can really think of is, I don't know, man, money, different things like that really messes up people. You know, I don't know. The ego is strong.
Out of nowhere, because of just how big this album is in terms of its track list with 21 whole songs compared to most other major records that are being put out today. Overall, what's really making Drake lose it, as it's exposing that the world is seeing just how low performing this record actually is the fact that when it comes to the one thing that Drake has talked about over and over again, which are top charting songs, as again, let's remember, from saying he's got more songs on the Billboard than the Beatles to going on a whole tangent on his collab with J. Cole where he was saying that he was one number one song away from MJ. Drake really reached a point where he was so chart obsessed that this meant everything to him. And again, even comparing this to the previous worst Drake album in the streaming era, Honestly Nevermind, which had 3 top 10 songs and one that reached number 1 when the album dropped in Jimmy Cooks. It's really poetic and so telling about how this entire moment in hip hop went and where it is going. That after Drake's last number 1 song was bragging about how he is only getting bigger on these charts, and that he's ultimately gonna be bigger than the greatest artist before him, and of course this is also the song that made Kendrick come out and diss him and J. Cole in the first place. Now seeing how after Drake said this and he has to see all of his own words become Kendrick Lamar's reality because of just how much he overstepped everything on that song, seeing him now return, and after we were already in an era where for multiple albums at this point, the only reason Drake was getting number 1 songs in the first place was because the momentum and numbers from the projects were so big, and not because he was creating massive cultural moments with singles like he used to back in the day or like Kendrick Lamar has been currently. Because the only thing people were talking about from these records were the gimmicks and not the actual music. Seeing Drake's downfall reach a point where because he has just failed to make genuinely great chart-topping songs, and because nobody cares as well about these daunting messes of albums that he is trying to pass off now, he can't even get anywhere back near the top of the Billboard charts, and really because of this, and overall just adding to why Drake is losing it over the fact of how bad this album is doing. His career continues to perform like this record, and things just continue to spiral out of control, which it seems like they are going to. Well, then those lines he said about being one away from Mike are gonna stand the test of time very well, as it's looking like Drake will never be able to break that record which he was so overly confident about taking from Mike in the worst way possible. And really, with Drake currently, as everything about this SSS For You album is showing that it's not gonna last on the charts, and maybe aside from one song in a few weeks, nobody is gonna be talking about anything from this album other than how much it showcased that Drake's time in the center of hip-hop and music is up, and that he will never be able to get that massive deal that he wants from his label, because what this album is doing really is just laughable compared to what Drake still believes he is worth. Overall, what Drake is now realizing is that everyone really has chose Kendrick Lamar and all of the other stars running things over him. And now because this is the reality that Drake has to deal with, and again, while adjusting to the fact that his time at the center of everything is over, there has been one thing that Drake has learned in the process of his album flopping that we are going to see a lot more from him going forward, which is that when it comes to the current state of his career, despite all of the listeners he has already lost and that he is never going to get back, he still has something he can benefit from, which comes down to the fact that being even more delusional than him, his loyal fans will believe anything he says and will continue to follow him no matter what happens. And really,
and we see that with Maul, like, the fact that Maul cannot even utter anything good about Kendrick is just wild. The way that he glazes and lights up when he talks about Drake, it is... Before we get into that, this video is sponsored by me. Hey, if you want to dive into new music, I have a catalog. Yeah, these are not singles. These are albums. But more recently this year, I did release an album called Tame Chaos. So you can listen, stream, download, purchase, all of that in the link in the description. And just, check it out, because I want to see if people are actually seeing this and going to the site. So anyways, the most wildest thing to see, this grown man, even his co-host sitting up there like, whoa, you're bugging. Like, you're bugging. You're literally bugging. And it is crazy to see the amount of delusion that's going on. Like, even throughout the beef, even when the tracks were dropping, people were just all like, oh, this is really, like, I don't know, Drake up, Drake up. What? There was never a point in time in the beef that I was just all like, oh yeah, Drake, this track, this was it right here, like, at all, But again, his fans was just all like, oh yeah, no, this is it, And it's wild to me. It's wild because people feel like they can't like both artists. Anytime that there's a critique made, they don't even want to hear it. It's just all like, we're making some pretty valid critiques. Why are you not hearing that? It's the most wildest thing. And it's interesting. It's interesting. Like I said, the level of delusion that Drake is on throughout all of this is just it's so fascinating because you say you're a fan of hip hop, battle rap, all those different things, but no way in the way that you're moving is showing that. And hey, the numbers don't lie. I think that there was a point in time where they was selling the project for half off, like just all of the wildest stuff. And I'm just all like, is this for real? Is this for real? But let me know what y'all think. If y'all have heard it, what did y'all think of it, honestly? Like I said, I personally do not plan on hearing it. It's not even on my radar. I'm just really interested to see how this plays out because a lot of people are just all like, oh, Kendrick's beating a dead horse, not remembering how Drake maneuvered when he was going against Meek Mill and he had the knockout freaking track and how long he performed that track, so it's just so weird. But anyways, y'all, it's Mr. Composition, the MC that writes fiction. Back at it with another reaction. Make sure to like, subscribe, notification bells on so you don't miss when I drop a new video on the road to 10K. This video will be in the description as well as my music, books, comics, and more. All right, y'all. Peace.